I don't know.
Are we gonna do?
Okay, yeah, no, we're accidentally live. Okay, hi everyone. 1 second. Hello and welcome back to the Scooter Pod. I'm your host, Bobby Howard. With me today, as always, we got Jameson Maxwell, Ty Lee, and this is part 2 of our roster breakdown. If you want to see part 1, where we cover the defense, it's on our channel, and it is on, wherever you get your podcasts. And while you're there, make sure you hit that subscribe button, because we got a lot of good stuff coming. But anyways, let's just get down to business. OU faces a bit of an overhaul here with the offense. After years of having the wunderkind Lincoln Riley, both do like head coach and offense coordinating duties. We actually have a proper OC in Jeff Lebby coming from the Baylor offense. We don't need to talk about that. Kind of tree. And he's reuniting with his good pal Dylan Gabriel. So there's a lot to it, a lot of new things. But at the same time, I don't think it's a total offensive overhaul. But we'll get into it as we go down. So before we break down the roster specifically, I kind of want to ask Jameson, what do you think the offense is going to look like under a Jeff Lebby system, and how is it going to look different from what we've been accustomed to with Lincoln Riley?
Yeah, hopefully it looks fast. That's what I really want. That speed let's call it the speed offense. I want to get scores and scores fast. Pound them up the middle with Eric Gray and, Javonte Barnes, hopefully, and then just spread out the wide receivers far on the outside and get some big plays. Honestly, I cannot wait because it just seems like a breath of fresh air. And with all that we've been dealing with and the critiques of, is Lincoln Riley actually, the wonder kid, coordinator, it seems like we're getting something that's really worked well in the past, and it'll be really exciting to watch.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I wonder if we're kind of getting the meerkat, like Sam Bradford-esque offense back, which is, interesting.
I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yeah, for sure. So Ty, what are your thoughts on the new Levy system and any differences, I guess, from Lincoln?
Yeah, so I think quick, fast, and in a hurry. Comparatively, it's going to be quick, fast, and in a hurry. When you think about Oklahoma offense in the past, we'll say 15 years for comparison's sake, you think of a fast offense because we were one of the first teams to sort of implement that, like we talked about with Sam Bradford back in the 08 years and onward. But when you really look at the stats, as I was reading for this episode, I was really shocked to see, I guess we sort of intuitively knew it, but the number of snaps per game across the board in the Big 12, but specifically OU, has gone down drastically in the past 10 years. We used to be running a lot of plays per game offensively, and now the average in the past couple of years has been close to 30, sometimes over 30 less than we were running a decade ago. So that produces a lot of offense naturally. So I expect us to go a lot faster. That was Levy's thing at Ole Miss. Obviously, as we get into positions, there are some sort of positional concerns that might limit or change the things we can do. But I, in short, expect a more traditional offense, run until they give us the pass, and then pass until they give us the run type thing. We're going to be running a lot more. I wouldn't expect a 50-50 split and expect a lot more plays.
Yeah, and I think the running game is something that a lot of people are excited about, myself included, because in the past, I feel like Lincoln's offense could just completely ignore it. And we saw that, I feel like a lot with like Kennedy Brooks, even going as far back as like Trey Sermon being a little bit underutilized when he was at OU as well. And it's frustrating, but Lebby loves himself he loves to integrate the running game, and I think that's something that's really exciting. But of course, he is a passing type of guy as well. So I think that balance is something that we've really needed, and it's something that I'm really excited about. And obviously with DeMarco Murray having that running back room as well, it's going to be cool. It's going to be exciting.
Yeah.
But we'll get into that a little bit later. Let's start it out with the quarterbacks. So gone is Caleb Williams, as you have known from the, and is Dylan Gabriel. Bit of a seasoned vet from what we've had in recent years, where we've been kind of playing, redshirt freshmen and, true freshmen in Caleb Williams' case. And now we have a new guy at the helm. So Jameson, I'm sure you've been watching some stuff on Gabriel. It's not even a competition. Thankfully, they didn't do the whole, we'll see how it goes. It's Gabriel and then a pretty large drop-off. And we'll talk about the depth a little bit later. But what have you seen out of Gabriel, and how good do you think he can be for OU this year?
Yeah, that's a big question. I feel like the OU fan base is pretty split on Gabriel. I feel like more optimist than pessimist, because obviously the Sooners fan base is pretty optimistic in general, but there's still a lot to be said. There is the big thing, and I've mentioned this on past pods to watch, is it seems Dylan Gabriel does have a little bit of problems when you look at like the advanced stats of deeper passes and his accuracy. So I feel like that's a pretty important, scheme in terms of this new system with Levy. So I'm very curious that whenever you have those wide receivers lining up far on the outside rather than, not as many on the inside, accuracy is a very, very important thing. But the quarterback room, that is something we really kind of just need to keep in the back of our mind, because it was very clear that this coaching staff really doesn't think much of the quarterback room beyond Dylan Gabriel. If something were to happen, honestly, this season could be in trash. Davis Bevel probably being the number 2 guy, transfer out of Pitt. He's tall and he's got good, he throws the ball with some zip allegedly, but other than that, he obviously has his vices. And then third string is General Booty, a guy that we got really, really, really late in the recruiting cycle and just popped up here, and here he is. Like, we think he's a meme, but this guy is the third string quarterback on this team.
Yeah, no, it's not looking great in terms of depth for sure. I will say Davis Bevel, unless we have a lot of Pitt fans here, you might not know. He's the guy who he came in third string, came in and saved the Peach Bowl, or almost saved the Peach Bowl for Pitt last year when the second string guy went down because Kenny Pickett was off to the league and he rested. So, he has experience coming in and relieving, but really that's kind of all he is. He's a really solid backup, I imagine, but you don't want him leading significant portions of the offense. And I think that's something that, we're going to have to look out for, because Gabriel has had injury issues in the recent past, in fact. So we'll see how it goes. But Ty, your thoughts on Gabriel? What have you seen so far?
Yeah, so I think the main thing that OU needs to keep in mind is sort of the situation that we were in prior to him coming. We're very lucky to have him, and he's a very, very good sort of, I don't want to say stopgap, because it sounds almost disposable. Not that, obviously everyone in the program is replaceable, as we've learned in this offseason, but he's sort of a stopgap guy. We don't have him for a long time. He's bringing in a lot of experience, obviously from arguably a lower level of play at UCF, but he performed really well there. The big point of concern for me is the one that you guys have both broached on your own, and it's that sort of injury history, and specifically because Jeff Lebby likes to run his quarterbacks, and we saw it with Gabriel at UCF under Levy. Lebby was averaging almost 80 carries per season, which is a hefty bit for a quarterback. And those were not, situation gets scrambled, you have to scramble. He likes to run his quarterbacks. We saw it with Matt Corral at Ole Miss. So that is, like I talked about in sort of my intro, one of those things where the tools that we have might cause us to approach the problem a little bit differently, because if we're smart, we have to look at load management. I think Gabriel is going to be really, really good. I really do think he'll outperform any realistic expectation. Well, I think he'll perform to the top end of realistic expectations. We'll say that. But the concern, is when we get later on in the season, when guys are dinged up, when the season is dragging on, and when we're starting to face some potential tougher games in the conference championship, hopefully, and then whatever comes after that. There is some concern there. So I trust our coaching staff to be able to manage that, and I think we are super, super lucky to have a guy that has experience with our incoming offensive coordinator, not just as, oh, I kind of know him, like he was his starter and they were, stars together last time they worked together. So that is something that's really good. And I think just to close myself out, the big thing that I'm keeping my framing for viewing everything that happens with Levy and with Dillon Gabriel this season specifically is it's a stopgap thing, and it's a thing that's there to sort of ease that transition, to make that first year slump, especially when we have this mass exodus and giant changeover. This is just something that we can bring in, almost thinking of him as a consultant in a business sense. We're bringing him in. He has the expertise. He's going to sit with us for this initial sort of start, but he's not going to be the guy that we have long term. But he can bring and plug those holes, stopgap, and hopefully pass on some knowledge. And it obviously helps when you don't tank for recruiting as well, because this is not a draft-based sport where you can tank and get better. The top performers get the best recruits, so we need to be performing well in the quarterback position to get good quarterbacks.
That is very true. It does kind of. I wonder if it is kind of more Jalen Hurtsy, where it's 1 year and then he's done. And I think partially some of that is based on how good he's going to be. And I don't really quite know what his ceiling is yet. And, I'm still, I don't think any of us do. But Jameson, what do you have in mind as like, what's the ceiling for Dillon Gabriel? Is it like a trip to New York level for the Heisman? Is it, are we trying to dream big here? Or do you think he can just be a really good, reliable quarterback that can possibly win you a Big 12?
I think his ceiling is top 5 quarterback in football. I think that's pretty honest.
College
obviously, yes, in college football, obviously not NFL. Oof. But yeah, I think top 5 in college football is a good ceiling for him, because obviously, top 2 is already taken. That's just not going to happen. But I think what really the big thing is with Dillon Gabriel is knowing the system, obviously beforehand, succeeding in it, and having a really good support staff in terms of coaches and players around him is why he's going to succeed and do well. People are going to make his job a lot easier, because we've been hearing and talking, like, this offensive line that we have coming in is seasoned, and there are a lot of old guys, and it's going to be a really, really good group. And we've talked about all the time, good offensive linemen make quarterbacks and running backs look exponentially better. We saw Sam Bradford have one of the best Heisman season in 2008, and his offensive line was nuts. I know Sam Bradford is very talented, but that season you have to really give a lot of props to his offensive line. And obviously we know what happens when all of his offensive linemen go away. He gets hurt in BYU the next season. But honestly, I really feel that if he has developed some bonds with some wide receivers here in camp, this offensive line is going to make him look really good.
Yeah, no, for sure. And, we'll dive a little bit deeper into the O-line as the pod progresses, for sure. That's a unit that I think a lot of people are very, very excited about in terms of improvement. But yeah, Ty, your thoughts. What do you think? What's your ceiling? I know you're like, yes, a good stopgap, but how good can he be? Are we talking like? Yeah, you know what I mean. You know what the question is.
Yeah, so I think thinking about it, I think I can put a hard sort of, it's not an empirical stat, but I can put a hard sort of stance down on this. I think first team all Big 12 is a very realistic, as we dive deeper into this, looking across the Big 12, obviously you never know what's going to happen. That's one of the beauties of college football. You never know what's going to happen. You never know who's going to develop, who's just going to have a breakout year. But I think first team all Big 12, very realistic. Best quarterback in the Big 12, I think, is a very achievable goal, because, again, it's a new system, but it's a new system for everyone. He has the continuity. Arguably, he is better off in this offensive system than the guys who have been at OU their entire career, because he's at least had a couple years with the OC. So, not to dive into the weeds on that one, but I think he could be the best quarterback in the Big 12 for sure, because he is a guy that succeeds when he's in a position to succeed. We haven't seen him in a position not to succeed. I'm discounting injuries, because that's a sort of I guess, it's out of your control in a lot of cases,
Mm-hmm.
but when he's in a position where he can succeed, I think he's going to succeed. I think coaching staff wise, he's in a position to succeed. Support system with a team around him, he's in a position to succeed. And I think it's important to mention, as an OU fan and as an OU fan base, based on sort of the drama that we had in the quarterback room last year, I think his relationship with the fan base, one, because he's a completely different person from what I can tell than the last two guys, but I think what the OU fan base has gone through in the past couple of years, and him coming in and sort of coming into this new system that everyone has already bought into so heavily, I think he's going to be in a much more supportive system. Not just I was, I'm of the belief that the last two guys got the treatment that they deserved. I think, one of them got treated better than he deserved, arguably, and it's not Caleb Williams. But he's, it's one of those things. It's one of those things where that can eat at a guy. Getting booed by your home crowd certainly cannot be good for the mental health.
While being undefeated.
I think there's going to be a lot of overt supports and a lot of very obvious, very clear. You can feel it in the air support across the board, and that's going to help. I think best quarterback in the Big 12. That was a really long-winded way to say first team all Big 12, which is what I started with.
Who is his competition?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is it's like Blake Chapin at Baylor. You got JT Daniels at West Virginia. I think West Virginia is going to be really bad, so I don't think he's going to be up there. You got Hudson Card and Quinn Ewers having a mid-off over in Austin. So
hey, wasn't Spencer Sanders the first team pre all Big 12 quarterback?
That's all you need to know.
And
Spencer
this dude,
Sanders being preseason all Big 12.
What? Like honestly, I hope that ceiling it would be a little bit higher than all Big 12 first team quarterback. But I think that is a very realistic and goal that probably should happen. I think that is the favorite in my eyes. Spencer Sanders ends the season as the first team Big 12 quarterback. What the hell happened? Honestly, I absolutely, my mind would be blown.
In a weird way, it would be like either Gabriel got hurt or like something has gone horribly wrong with the offense if Sanders gets in over him like that, because Sanders, look, I've seen enough. I don't think he can be remotely that good of a quarterback. I mean, come on. I don't think he's that good.
No, y'all know my thoughts on him. We will talk plenty about Oklahoma State. Let's move on to running backs, though. We've talked a lot about quarterback because,
yes, absolutely.
I mean, it's fun to talk about, but there's really not too much discussion to be had. There's just a lot of wait and see kind of thing. It's a lot of speculation. But the running back room, I think that's completely different. We've talked about that with Levy's scheme, that he loves running his running backs. And Eric Gray is poised for a big-time year. Bobby also was talking a little bit earlier in the pod. It seems like we've had a lot of kind of second-string running backs that kind of get overshadowed, and we give, the ball to 3 or 4 different guys, and we're not giving guys the run that they deserve. Eric Gray, very, very talented. I feel like we bragged about him all the time, but it just seems like he didn't get enough run last year. He's a huge leader within this offense. Seems like a lot of people respect him and very, very talented. He'll be clear RB1. And behind him, RB2, I truly think it's Javonte Barnes. Sorry, Ty, I don't think it's Marcus Major. Javonte Barnes, even though it looks like from some of the pre-fall camp stuff, he has kind of a little bit of a slump than at the beginning in the spring when he looked like an absolute monster. But this guy's got athleticism off the charts, and he's going to be so fun to watch. I'm really excited about Javonte Barnes.
Yeah, no, I mean, this running back stable is really, really interesting because I feel like we have a lot of, other than Gray, I feel like we have a lot of guys who are like really unproven but very exciting. I think Javonte Barnes is one of them. I've heard really good things about Gavin Sawchuk as well, another freshman. And then Marcus Major, who has had his moments, but hasn't broken through in the way that we've kind of wanted him to for one reason or another. But no, I don't know. Barnes is definitely a name to circle. But for me, though, the pair of freshmen, I want to see which one of those kind of becomes one of those breakout guys. I feel like one of them will.
Yeah, I
Ty?
do too.
Yeah, certainly. In defense of my man, Marcus Major, hopefully this fall, because it's been a problem before, hopefully this fall he remembers to enroll in classes. I don't even know how you can forget to do that.
He turned it around. He turned it around.
Someone on the
fine.
football team, but he has remembered to enroll, hopefully. Certainly we're on top of that. But an interesting comment that Jeff Lebby had I don't know what day it was in the past 48 hours, or I guess 72 because it's Sunday. But someone had asked him about the depth in the running back room because that's one of the rooms where we have sort of all of these people lined up to be breakout stars. And this is very interesting to me, especially in Eric Gray's case, is Levy said that he didn't feel like there was a whole lot of depth when it came to actual experience in that room. So what that meant exactly, I'm not entirely sure. Honestly, it's on me for not watching the entire press conference, but even, devoid of context, I think that was an interesting choice of words there. But I think it is important to note, again, that we're going to be running dedicated, halfback runs, fullback, backfield runs, dedicated backfield runs, a lot more than we have been used to in the past under Lincoln Riley. And I think it's important because even if we don't see an increase in performance from, we'll say Eric Gray specifically, the stats are going to look better because he's going to have more carries. Because at the end of the day, a lot of the times you get into, this many yards on this many carries or averaging this. But a lot of the times you just see yards and touchdowns. And those are going to increase when you get more chances either way. It's shooting 50 shots versus shooting 100 shots. You're bound to hit a few more. So, but I think he will increase in production. I think we will see a step up because I think that one of the other things Levy sort of hinted at with the running backs specifically was they weren't really in a position to succeed. Regardless of how good the line was, it was almost a weird sort of afterthought even that the running backs were back there. We were such a quarterback heavy thing and running backs were sort of weirdly relegated, not to diminish the role of a tight end, because obviously we utilize tight ends a lot, but sort of like a tight end thing. Like it was just like, this is also a tool here that we can kind of use when the main WRs and the QB aren't working. This is not the offense that we're going to be dealing with now. So I think that I expect a significant increase in actual performance by Eric Gray. And if he's in a position where he's better able to be supported by the coaching, by the play calling, by everything around him, I think this is really going to be a resume bullet point year. So I don't know, doesn't have to be any awards, doesn't have to be anything crazy. I'm not saying he's going to be, after this year, he's going to go first round in the draft, but I think that he's going to be a firm, number one running back. And I think he's going to get national attention. Look at what Eric Gray is doing over at OU. And at the same time, the other guys are also going to get a lot of chances.
Yeah, absolutely. Jameson, anything else you want to cover on the running backs, or should we move to wide receivers?
Let's move to wide receivers because honestly, running back, I said it earlier, I'm very intrigued because there's a lot of new faces and a lot of freshmen that I think will be getting decent run. And like Bobby said, and I agree, there's going to be a darling child where I think it's going to be Javonte Barnes, but who knows, it could be Sawchuk that the fans are going to fall in love with. But the wide receivers, there's also some breakout candidates here. We already know Marvin Mims, very big staple guy. And hopefully now that he stayed here at OU after saying he wasn't getting used enough in Lincoln Riley's system, that they're going to give him the respect and the attention that he deserves. On the other side, I guess, on the other outside wide receiver, I wouldn't be surprised if Jalil Farouk beats the job from Theo Weiss. Allegedly, Jalil Farouk has been killing in a camp, and we saw how he did in the bowl game last year. Kind of had a little bit of a coming out party. Very fortunate to still have him because he was a Caleb Williams guy in that recruiting class, but it seems like he's found a little home here, and he could have, honestly, that if you're talking about a breakout candidate for the offense this year, Jalil Farouk is probably your name you want to circle. But then, on the inside, we always talk about Drake Stoops in his senior season. That is very, very, reliable kind of guy. And then some other names just all across the wide receiver room that I just want to mention and we can talk about and just keep them in the back of your head. I think Jaden Gibson, the freshman 6'5" out of Florida, is a huge fun name to watch because he showed us a lot in the spring game. I think JJ Hester, the Missouri transfer wide receiver, he's been showing a lot of good things and he's got some athleticism. Another transfer, LV Bunkley Shelton, as well, from Arizona, the area that I think could also be a nice possession wide receiver. And then kind of those guys that have hidden on our roster in the past, like Brian Darby's and like Trey West and stuff. I'm sure you'll see a couple snaps here and there, but honestly, plenty of new faces, a lot of fun. Bobby, what name out of those really gets you the most excited? And we just won't say Marvin Mims. What gives you the most excitement out of those names?
I mean, I said it in the spring, and I'm still kind of behind it, but Jaleel Farouk has been the guy I've kind of circled a bit. I'm still excited about him. I think he, was one of those guys who did show a lot of potential, and I think I'm definitely pumped about seeing him, without a doubt. I know we're like kind of not sure on Weiss yet, but I want to see him healthy again. I think there is still a chance it hits. To be fair, that might still just be like me, who's the guy we had that ended up transferring to Miami that just was always not that great? I'm blinking so hard. Oh yeah, Charleston Rambo.
Rambo.
The big fisherman.
The big fisherman.
More fishing areas out there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, him and Paul George. Just love that.
Fishing for the bag.
Bag fishing. I think Theo Weiss, this I feel like this is his last shot, I think, at OU. I think he would have eligibility. I don't know if he's a true senior or not, or it does show that, but I don't know. Wait. Yeah, so he's a senior, but like the COVID year also happened. So does that mean he's
he would have another year as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, for sure. Cool. Yeah. So, Theo Weiss, I think this could be a year for him. I'm holding out for him for sure. So, anyways,
with Theo Weiss, you have to remember he's dealt with injuries, which is a big thing. But we have to acknowledge he's been named to the Campbell watch list this year. So obviously
everyone gets put on every single freaking watch list.
Well, yeah,
it's legitimately we're watching him.
Okay, let me try to do some analysis here.
All right,
There's got to be some sort of people, looking at him. But this is why I needed to bring that up. But I've never been really that high on him. I don't, that entire. He's obviously not associated with the other two from that sort of now very infamous class of 3 5-star receivers that came in and just sort of, got all the hype in the world, and then there was just not a whole lot there. So he obviously has had some extenuating circumstances with injury and stuff, but I've never really been that high on him. I know we sort of discounted him, but it's because it's the obvious thing. This is Mims's year. I think Mims has some real potential for serious, looking at potential awards, looking at first teams and some serious stats. I think Mims could really get the exclamation points on a resume and on a lot of things here. I've never understood, honestly, I've really truly have never understood the sense of loss with Mario Williams leaving, not to continue to bring up old things, but he was like 5'6" and never really did anything. I understand he was a freshman. Mims had an impact as a freshman. Mims is an OU receiver. He's our current generation's Sterling Shepard or CeeDee Lamb. I'm going to die on that hill. He's going to perform well, and he's really all that it is. And one of my big conspiracy theories within college football is the benefit of being the WR2 on a team. And I think at initial glance, that's Theo Weiss, but the WR2 has the advantage of the guy that gets all the hype, the guy that gets all the stats and is the big threat like Mims is going to get the best coverage when you're preparing as the opposing team, week in and week out. And in college football, the difference in skill level is so huge, and secondary is just such a hard position group to play that there's a tremendous advantage in being that WR2, because a lot of times there just isn't the whole lot of depth there. Teams will have a really firm best corner and maybe a really firm best safety, but very rarely are you dealing with a team that has two really good safeties. Usually you'll have a really good one and then a one that's good, but you're just hoping he doesn't get cooked. So I don't think it's Theo Weiss, and I think there's a whole lot of depth there. And this is the position group I'm most excited about, because there's really going to be some exciting developments and battles there to see who becomes that WR2. And I don't think it'll be firm until after Red River.
I agree. I think that's about right. That's honestly, there's a spot, maybe even two spots for the OU fans to really latch on to a wide receiver next to Marvin Mims. Marvin Mims, we've seen it. He can be a guy that could be a high-end possession wide receiver, but at the same time, he's a downfield threat, and he's not going to get 10 catches for 80 yards in a game. That's not his game. So there's a possession wide receiver slot open for the taking, and Theo Weiss, I would hope, would want to be that. But there's plenty of other guys on this roster that can fill that role. Let's talk about the tight ends now. This is a kind of very cut and dry tight end room. I think you got a Braden Willis, who is great in the passing and has gotten better at blocking. Obviously, last year there was a lot of head scratching moments and misses in terms of blocking, but he came in as a wide receiver, a big body wide receiver, and he's still learning, and he's really coming into form, and he's obviously huge yoke now. And then in terms of heavy set, Daniel Parker, a guy that I know Ty's been talking a lot about and who he really likes. Really good blocker, one of the better blocking tight ends in college football coming out of Missouri last year. Weird to think that there's a really good player coming out of Missouri, but we nabbed him. And he could be a goal line type of guy too. I wouldn't be surprised at all if he gets plenty of play action, kind of little wheel routes going out into the end zone for some goal line plays. But beyond that, really, like Jason Llewellyn being freshman, redshirt freshman, you can look at him. And then Caden Helms, but they still need some more time. They really do. And so it's really a too deep situation. And then kind of those Jason Llewellyn and Caden Helms in a later time.
Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with that.
I messed up. I said redshirt freshman. I'm sorry. He's freshman. He's just a regular freshman. Might be.
Yeah. But no, I agree. I think you really do have those two, and they both do completely different things. Willis was kind of like that, for a while was more of like this weird kind of H-back, but whatever. But now he's kind of more like a true tight end. And then, like you said, Parker is like that, blocking, classic, tough nose tight end, which Jeff Lebby loves to integrate tight ends like a lot in his offense, from what I've seen and heard. So Parker is like, that's a Lebby type of guy. So I'm excited about him.
There's a reason we went out and got him quick, and he committed very fast after the Lebby hire. Like, it did not take too much time. Obviously, there were some guys that Lebby had been looking about at Ole Miss, and he probably just took over his folder and changed the name from Ole Miss to Oklahoma and just moved over in the transfer portal.
Just taped over it.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's clear. Yeah, they got some blue folders. They got some powder blue folders with an OU sticker on them, but hey, I think it's very clear that Daniel Parker is going to be our main guy, because you wouldn't transfer somewhere as a senior to play second fiddle or to sit on the bench when you're already a starter. So I think it's very obvious with that, and then to further dive into that, it's everyone is new to the coaching staff. The coaching staff are the ones that determine who is playing. Obviously, your practice performance, your summer performance, all that stuff is what matters. But the coaching staff determines who plays, and obviously Levy liked what he saw, and there was some discussion there to get him to transfer here. But like we talked about, that's more of his type of guy. When we're looking at an offense that is much more traditional, and we're going to be running a lot, we're going to run until you open up the pass. You want the guy that's a more traditional tight end. It sort of makes natural sense, not to slight any of the other tight ends that we have, Braden Willis specifically, the other senior. But when you're a guy that's sort of been converted into the position, even if you performed well, completely different system and methodology and everything else, their stats are kind of similar. Daniel Parker took 12 receptions last year. Willis took 15. Daniel Parker had 3 touchdowns. Willis had 2. Willis did better on yards and then average yards, but they're pretty similar when it came to actual receiving. I guess you'd really have to dive into the game tape to see that stuff, but I think it's going to be a situation where both guys get some play time. Obviously, we're going to have to manage that because it could sort of telegraph what we're intending to do if you have a guy that's known as a receiver and a guy that's known as a blocker as a tight end. That's going to be something that kind of telegraphs intentions, maybe can open up some trick plays. But I think Daniel Parker is our guy, and I think he's going to be another one of those guys that's in a situation where he was in a good position. But I think Daniel Parker, of all the guys we've talked about so far, outside of Eric Gray, this is the best situation he's been in terms of a system that supports his style of play and that is really going to be, again, because he's a senior, that exclamation point on a resume potentially. So a guy with, nothing else to leave on the table, fits the system well. I understand he's new coming in, but I have high expectations.
Is this the Marcus Major stamp for you, Ty? That is Daniel Parker your new Marcus Major?
No, I don't think so, because we're talking about a senior with a proven track record versus I tried to pull a true freshman out of the hat and say,
Ty stamp of approval. You never want it.
No, I've had some very good ones.
Drake Stoops. I'll give you Drake Stoops.
There was a
Drake
debate
Stoops
on this podcast like 3 years ago about how CeeDee Lamb was a better receiver than Hollywood Brown, and I was like torn apart for that. And I was a little bit ahead of my time, I will say, but I've not. It has not all been Mims calls.
That's true. Great. That's true. And I also
could be their major calls, and this could be his breakout year. That one is not dead yet. That one is not. He's not gone yet.
I've been playing NCAA 14 this past week, and I went into my depth chart and changed Marcus Major to a fullback.
Oh, no.
It doesn't make any sense, but I was like, I'd rather have him just at the fullback position.
That's funny. What about? Hey, I'm just saying, what about a double tight end system? Maybe put them both out there at the same time.
And they work so well. They're different. They're completely different. Obviously their stats might have been similar, but the way they play is very, very different. So honestly, that's going to be fun. But let's talk about the offensive line to finish out this podcast. Who's going to be right next to the tight end? We can go and talk left tackle and right tackle. Now, left tackle is probably the biggest storyline of this season in the offensive line, in my opinion. Maybe even right tackle could be the biggest storyline. Is can Anton Harrison be a second, third round pick kind of guy at that position? Obviously, left tackle is the most sought after thing in the draft because it's really hard to come across a very good, productive left tackle. And as soon as a team gets one, their ceiling in the NFL goes up a lot higher. Obviously, I'm a Chargers fan, but you got to think Rashawn Slater comes in as a rookie and becomes an all-pro kind of guy, completely changes the ceiling and the talk of that whole team. So a kind of guy like that is really, really sought after, and his stock gets punched up in the draft grade. And can he be that guy? We saw he has the strength, the athleticism, but the problem is he had a little bit of problem with consistency here and there. And that might not be his fault because it seems like he didn't have a stable foothold on the job because Beatonbow loved putting in Swinson over and over and over. But maybe now that he's a little bit older and he's been through the system for 2 years now, that's his position and he doesn't have to look over his shoulder. I expect good things out of Anton Harrison. At the right tackle, Juanie Morris. I think Juanie Morris, we expected him be a huge part in the offense last year. But unfortunately, it seems like the Beatonbow system didn't really catch on to it as quick as other people did. But now we know that he's got a lot of talent and he's had a year under his belt. Can he be a really good right tackle? Something that we have been lacking, I feel like, for a couple years now. Obviously, Tyrese Robinson was a huge head scratcher last year and a lot of times. So I'm honestly, the tackles are by far the biggest story points of these. And then behind them, just names to keep an eye on. It seems like Savion Byrd is becoming Bill Beatonbow's kind of like little favorite recruit. And before we know it, he's probably going to be our starting left or right tackle. And we're going to be having the same conversations about him later. And then Tyler Guyton allegedly is just absolutely catching on to the system really easily. And he's a guy who does not have much really experienced playing football, but transfer out of TCU, it seems like we got an absolute steal from the Frogs. But do you feel comfortable and confident in this tackle position, Bobby? And do you feel like it's going to set up Gabriel to where he can do a lot better?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I think Harrison and, just from what you've heard about Guyton, it's intriguing, and not only that, but Juanie Morris, once now that he's had a full year, I feel I'm excited about that as well. And overall, let's also bring up this point. Now they're not doing CrossFit anymore. They have Schmitty. This offensive line, from what I've heard, has taken just a physical leap since they've been actually lifting and really kind of hitting it a little bit harder. So I think overall, I'm excited about the O-line. But tackle wise, yeah, I'm not concerned at all. Actually, I we'll see how it pans out because it's preseason. That's just kind of how it is. But I don't know. Early reports have me very excited though.
Yeah, like Bobby, the stuff that I'm seeing in terms of reporting, but then also comments from the coaching staff when they come out on the line, I obviously sometimes those comments, or a lot of the times those comments are the line as a whole. But I really, as we continue to dive into this, I don't know that there's necessarily any point that really flashes out as a point of concern. I think the line is interesting in sort of its. I'm trying to think of the correct word. Depth would be the initial one that comes to mind, but I feel like there's perhaps a better one to describe it. But when you talk about
reliable,
yeah, reliable, but reliable across the board. Like if we're having to sub people in, there's not really, especially when we're looking at the tackles. There's not really a guy that we're like, God, I hope we don't have to put this guy in. Obviously, things happen, but I'm liking what I see from the line. I'm not seeing any, because when you're talking about line stuff in preseason discussion, you have the practices, practice reports, and things like that. But you're never going to hear like, oh, so-and-so's or very rarely are you going to hear, oh, so-and-so's a superstar. He's going to light it up like you would hear with a receiver or with a quarter or with a skill position or something like that. So it's much harder to read into those reports. The fact that I'm not seeing really any bad news or really any pessimistic news or people trying to sort of hedge their takes, not too much is something that I think is a good indicator.
For sure. There's actually a really good comment here from 1982. Bring up Tyler Guyton could be like McGowan from Baylor. Remember him a couple years ago? That was I'm not 100% certain, but I would love it if we had a McGowan type guy.
He's not going to be a tight end.
No, but
I'm just going to straight up. It would
be pretty funny.
Obviously, he has the athleticism, but for a guy who's just now coming into this position and really getting his good feet under him and getting this much positive review, we're not going to be changing his position. He's the type of guy that could be pulling, maybe making we're taking right tackles and somehow pulling on some halfback counters and doing some crazy stuff like that. Like Trent Williams coming off the edge that we saw for the San Francisco 49ers, some like crazy stuff like that. Maybe that, but I don't foresee him really, even sniffing tight end. Obviously, maybe we can get a little bit funky and doing some offensive line, big boy touchdowns. But I think this is just a great, great piece to have because I kind of said this in the past in some recruiting episodes. In terms of offensive line, you get your guys that you want, but I think at the bottom of it, you got to take some swings. Some guys that maybe might not have as much experience, but have a lot of tools in their tool chest to where if they do get that footwork down and get the scheme down, they could be an NFL draft pick. And honestly, I'm not going to say he's going to be a draft pick, but Tyler Guyton's got the tools, and we'll see what happens if he gets some run in the second string unit moving forward. But yeah, I understand the thought, but let's talk about the guards. Let's talk about the guards here. And I think the left guard is the least talked about and will be one of the most not impactful, but for the position itself, a very, very good player that doesn't get talked enough about. And that's McCabe Tower coming in as a transfer. Seems like he just came in and immediately just like, that's his job. Nobody's even competing with it for him. He has it, set, and having him right next to Anton Harrison, having a really strong left side of your line to where that's the blind. Wouldn't be his blind side. God, I got to start thinking about left-handed quarterbacks. But having one side of the line that's really strong, that's going to really help your run game. And it seems like there's really not too much competition behind him. And then at the right guard, Chris Murray, a guy who's been here for a while, he's done it. And another guy came in as a transfer. So I'm feeling pretty good about that interior offensive line right now. Looking deeper, it seems like Jacob Sexton, Jake Taylor are getting some run in practice. Bray Walker is now into his senior year. Seems like he never really caught on to things, but just a name to keep an eye on. And, some other guys like Kyle Ergenbright and Marcus Alexander as well. But have you seen much, Bobby, about McCabe Tower And do you feel like we talked about how we feel really good about the outside in our tackles? Do you feel like our interior might be even a little bit better?
I mean, I'm just saying, I'm buying into the hopium on it. I think this is going to be a big, solid unit. Maybe I don't want to say like a dark horse for line of the year, but I don't know. If there's one thing we know Beanbo can develop guys 100%. And even though we had a bad year last year, these are the type of guys who can get there with the right coaching, with the right conditioning, all of that. So my thing is like, yeah, no, I think that's a very capable thing. So I'm telling you, I'm hyped. I think the interior, I think the entire line is going to be very good.
Yeah, I'm with Bobby. It's a system that's known to create successful linemen. It's also a system that is sort of notoriously complex in terms of lines. When we're talking about guards, I have to use the opportunity. It is not really relevant to anyone that's going to be playing, but we got to talk about my guy Rob Congle because he just has a hilarious career path to me. I just think it's really funny that he walked on at A&M, was there for a year, was like, I don't like this, went to Arizona where he actually played, and then decided to transfer to OU for some reason.
He got some good reps last year at
Yeah.
center. And honestly, and when we talk about center, honestly, there's a conversation to be made that could he beat Andrew Raym?
Yeah, but I love me a guy that has, well, I guess this is a good segue into the next position group we're going to talk about, but I love me a guy who has 3 colleges on his resume as an athlete. That is hard to do, even with the new sort of rules and you got
Texas A&M and Arizona before that. What a combo! Honestly,
such a weird, and then to OU. It was such a weird, like he started out at A&M, then he went to Arizona for some reason, which is like that's not to hype Texas A&M up, but you got to see that as sort of a step down move career wise. What's up with that? And then he gets some play time, and now he's up at OU and might do something. It is his senior year again. Who knows how eligibility works now with rules and the
I
COVID
can't keep
stuff.
up with it.
And the fact that he's transferred twice already, who knows how that factors in. He might have a whole nother year where we see him playing at Ohio State or something.
Yeah, I think he's a grad transfer.
Yeah, that's usually how it works. You get your one-time transfer the first time, and then you graduate, and you can get that next transfer. That's probably my guess with that. I'm guessing this is probably his last year of eligibility.
Yeah.
But yeah, let's talk about it because him versus Andrew Raym is the center competition, and this is the weakest part of our line. And that's saying something because Andrew Raym, we talked about him for a long time, that this could be, your next Creed Humphrey. He's a high character guy, very smart, very likable. But obviously he had some injuries last year that kind of handicapped him in really fulfilling his full potential. Robert Conjol is a great, kind of guy that can be in your room. And if someone goes down at the left guard, right guard, center, he can step in and play those positions. And you feel very confident about that. So I think I really hope Andrew Raym takes the next step this year and really becomes that, OU center that we've seen so many of in the past. But in terms of just our offensive line, when you're saying Andrew Raym is the weak point on the O-line, I still feel pretty damn good about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good. I'm excited about the line for sure. For sure. Well, what else? I guess that's kind of
it. That's it. I want to do one plug before you take us home and finish this podcast. To everyone listening, obviously, if you're new here, listen to this because we've got something really fun set up for y'all coming next week for our episode. There's all these kind of previews of what to expect from the season, what we've been doing, but it's very easy to kind of forget what happened last season. And obviously, there's some things that we really don't want to remember too much about, but I think it's really key to kind of know some, nitty gritty details about what happened last season to kind of give you an idea of what's going to be happening this season. And what I've got set up is I am currently making a kind of Jeopardy trivia game in terms of what happened last season to test Bobby out to see how well he knows it. And we're bringing on, it could be 2 guests. We know for sure 1 guest, but 2 guests writers and beat writers around the Oklahoma landscape that are also very, very knowledgeable. So we will be testing Bobby's knowledge and to see if he can come out on top in our little trivia game. It's going to be a really fun episode, and I'm really excited for it. So if y'all aren't regular listeners, subscribe and hit that bell, because next episode is going to be a really, really fun one. And I want y'all to be playing along in the chat too. It'll be a really fun exercise.
Yeah, no, next Sunday it's going to be fun. And yeah, like, you know, and I'm pretty pumped too, because these are like legit dudes. It's not like we just were like, hey, yeah, it's our pal Steve. He, you know, these are some solid names. I'm pretty excited about it. And we'll kind of divulge that as the week goes on. But I gotta say, personally, I'm a little nervous, but I'm confident. I feel good.
I told Bobby we're not going to be doing too much, pretty much at all, any OU history, and that's like Bobby's wheelhouse.
Now,
like,
if there was a history segment, I'd do pretty well. But
yeah,
you know.
I'm glad we're doing this, because Ty, I was thinking about it beforehand. If I would have made it just for y'all two, it'd have been you versus Bobby. It'd have been an absolute slaughter.
It would not have been very competitive.
Fair enough.
Who is Drake Stoops? I'm like, wrong again. Who is Delarian Turner-Yell?
This man was the MVP of the season last year.
Ty, you have constantly talked about him on the podcast. What does DTY stand for?
Ooh, yikes.
Wyoming is asshole. Why Jameson hate?
Because Wyoming's a bastard man.
Correct.
No, but as we wrap up, I have one important note for everyone watching and viewing. Thank you for tuning in. We do this for you guys. The viewers and the fans, not the viewers, the fans of college football are what make college football special. That's what separates it from every other sport in the world. I firmly believe that, from students to alumni to everyone in between. It's all about the fans. And if you're like me, because I don't consider myself an expert. I consider the two guys sitting to my, I guess, screen left experts, but I am not. I consider myself a fan. And when I read about OU, I constantly read about parity within the Big 12. It's going to be very competitive. It's going to be this. It's going to be up for grabs. It's not. Oklahoma we are the rightful owners of this conference. We dropped the ball last year because we were backstabbed. There's going to be an uptick in production this year. I'm telling you that right now. Offensively, we will be better off. We're taking on a better system. We're taking on a guy in Jeff Lebby who ran a system at Ole Miss, at a mid-tier SEC team, and was considered one of the best offenses in college football last year in the SEC West. You know, so now he's coming in. He's got still some really good, I would argue that the players, the tools he's working with, I understand the Matt Corral hype, but I'd say the players he's working with now in terms of looking at him as a toolkit, he has a better toolkit now than he did at Ole Miss, in a much easier, much smaller pond to swim in as the fish. So the Big 12 as a whole is looking like sort of a down year for a lot of the teams. I understand all the, concern with OU, all the turnover, all the expectations have to be managed, but this is our year when it comes to in the conference, and I would not expect anything but an uptick in performance from the offense. There's going to be hiccups, but make no mistake about it. There is no parity in the Big 12. This is our conference. The only reason it wasn't our conference last year was because we got backstabbed by our coach. That's not going to happen this year. And so, I mean, that's objectively what occurred,
true.
Right?
He gave up. I think
just
he gave
mentally just zoned out and then left us to coast. You know, what else was going to happen? That is the only reason. This is our conference. We run this conference. There is no parity. There is no up for competition. We will continue to dominate this conference until we leave, as we have chosen to do, because we have gotten bored, because it's not fun anymore when we just absolutely run rule everyone, basically. So expect that.
Yeah, fair enough. And, to answer the question literally in the header of the video and, our definitely not clickbaity thumbnail, I think OU's offense is going to stay elite. I think they're going to be better. I don't think there's going to be a drop-off. like you said, Ty, if you think about that OU offense last year, it was not elite. It was not good. There were times where the defense was saving our ass. Think about like this offense that we have this year won't get shut out by Kansas at a half. I think that is a strong statement to say. It shouldn't be, but last year's offense was just kind of mid. This one, I think, is going to be very good. I'm really excited about the system. I think the familiarity with Gabriel and Levy really helps us out, and I think it's going to be a good leap. So my answer is, yeah, no, they're going to be better. They're going to be elite, where last year was just kind of not. It was one guy who ran really good.
I was going to say very short. I think you could make an argument that maybe the players as a whole across the board potentially were better last year, but last year we had an offense that even when, say, Riley wasn't zoned out, the offense didn't know itself. It just wasn't sure of itself. It was almost like a middle school age kid. It was trying to find itself constantly, and just all these internal struggles of who belongs in what position, what is going on, like trying to learn everything. This offense this year, even if it's technically not as flashy on paper, it knows itself. And that is a ridiculous advantage in terms of what you're going to see in terms of on-field production.
Well, and hopefully they can be, you can outsmart rushing 3 and dropping 8, which, a nice check down would have been nice, Lincoln. Would have been cool. You like H-backs. Jeremiah Hall was right there. Braden Willis was right there. Just check it down. What are we doing here?
Also,
it's
that's
ridiculous.
Caleb Williams' fault, too. He didn't check down at all.
Well, neither did Spencer Rattler.
No, well, yeah. I mean, that's a different conversation for another day.
That is true. But, yeah, Jameson, what do you – just quick thing. What do you think? Do you think they're going to – no drop-off, right? Do you think they're going to be better?
I think we'll be better because we actually have consistency. We're not changing in the middle of the season. Obviously, people are hurt. Caleb Williams leaving. But the thing is, knowing who your quarterback is that whole offseason, scheming around that, giving him an offense that fits him to where he can do his best. Obviously, Caleb Williams and Spencer Rattler are very, very different. So it shows you a lot how well Caleb Williams did, because that was not schemed for him, and they had to make up some stuff on the fly. So I feel very confident. And to be completely honest with you, I am drinking a lot of Lebby Kool-Aid, because what he did with Matt Corral, I watched, the past couple of years of Matt Corral, and I said, man, this guy is a fun watch. He's such a perfect, the way he plays, so perfect for college. And we'll see how much that was because of his coach.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I'm very excited. It's going to be good. So, all right, folks, thank you so much for watching along live on YouTube. If you're hearing this on replay on the podcast, you should go ahead and subscribe. It's pretty fun. Nice to get to hang out, do a little comments action. And thanks to everyone who, were commenting and everything. I know we weren't really kind of treating this as a Q&A sort of deal, but we saw it. We appreciate them for sure. So always like our live viewers. But yeah, make sure to hit that subscribe button, 5 stars, all that good stuff, etc. And yeah, that has been the Schooner Pod offensive preview. Again, if you want to see the defensive one, that is already up in your podcast feeds or on YouTube. So just scroll down a little bit. It's right there, I promise. So anyways, that's been the show. We'll see you next week for the trivia contest, and on Wednesday we're doing our Big 12 preview, which I always love. We'll bring on Boat and Blake and really talk about the conference. So very, very hyped for that. Very hyped for that. It's going to be a good week. So all right, for me, Jameson and Ty, this has been the Schooner Pod. We'll catch you guys later. Have a good one. Boomer Sooner.